Tim Freedman, welcome to Noise11.com with some more exciting news, tour dates for 2026 and back with that big band orchestra again.
Yes, rolling it out nationally and starting to add shows, which is exciting.
Well, it was rather cinematic when I saw the show at Hamer Hall. It was absolutely stunning to watch live because there's so much work that goes into the scoring of the songs for a show like that. Do you have to keep that consistent for 2026 or are you planning some surprises?
I'm adding 3 songs to that repertoire that you saw with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. So in other words, it'll be a very similar show.
This will be the most, I guess, comprehensive and elaborate performances that you've had around Australia with the orchestras. How does each orchestra in each state bring a point of difference to each show?
Well, each orchestra has its strengths, and some of them have their weaknesses. The strings of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra are beautiful. I remember, and these things may have changed, 7 years ago, the West Australian Symphony had some brass players that used to also play in soul bands, so they had a really good swing. So it is interesting to spot the idiosyncrasies of each state orchestra indeed. But not having played with these people for 8 years now, I will be hesitant to pass judgment before the shows.
Well, the Melbourne show really focused on the Eternal Nightcap album, especially the Charlie Trilogy. Will Charlie be an integral part of 2026 for you again?
Yeah, I like telling that story. I go from Charlie 1 to Charlie 2 and then Charlie 2.5, which was written 10 years later and is called Keep the Light On. It made sense to me to give the first half a very narrative thread and to be very atmospheric. And I enjoyed being a bit dark and somber for a whole 50 minutes.
The orchestra history that you've had goes back a long, long way. With the songs that are common to the original orchestra shows all those years ago and to what you're doing now, is there a consistency to those songs or have they evolved?
With an orchestra, you have to play them in the same structure and the same crescendos and decrescendos as the score. So they are trapped in amber, so to speak, which is why I always need to add new songs every time we go around. And that's why there's a couple of new tunes, 3 new arrangements in the first set that people would not have seen in 2017.
You worked with some amazing arrangers over that time, Daniel Denham, Benjamin Northey, Sean O'Boyle, Jamie Messenger, Peter Sculthorpe. What have each of those as individuals done to the songs that surprised even you?
Well, they like the project because I give them carte blanche. So all of them have added a lot of melody lines. So this sort of 4-dimensional version of the Whitlams, it surprises people that know the albums because there's even more hooks than I managed to stuff in at the time. And Sculthorpe, of course, is not only Australia's greatest and most auspicious composer, but he's one of the world's. So the class of his intervals and melodies is just astounding, and I never get sick of listening to his string interlude in Out the Back.
When you performed Thank You for Loving Me at My Worst at the Hamer Hall show in Melbourne, you introduced it as a funeral favourite for self-confessed fuck-ups. You must enjoy that contrast of having, the grandeur of the orchestra, yet still being able to tell it like it is to the audience.
Yeah, the last 20 minutes is the silly side of the Whitlams, the pub rock side, the sort of jocular side, the side where we came from a tradition of the whoopee band and mental as anything, as opposed to Tom Waits and Randy Newman. So our schizophrenia becomes very evident.
Well, this band started out in the pubs, didn't it? How did that prepare you for the orchestra halls?
You have to try and retain the energy of the pubs playing at half the volume. And that's a skill that a band only learns after a decade or two, I find.
The orchestra does lift the band, though. When you see uh, the different sort of bands that have used an orchestra over the years, even a band like Metallica with the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, it's amazing how uh, it's almost a perfect fit, isn't it, to have an orchestra with a rock band?
Well, depending on the composer, yes, indeed. Um, I'm not sure that it was worth the trouble with Kiss. Do you?
Well, I don't think the Kiss live album was actually a live album. I know for a fact it was recorded in a studio in Richmond.
I see. And then some good crowd noise was put on top.
Yeah, yeah, there wasn't a lot of original orchestra on that album. The Perth concert with the Western Australian Symphony Orchestra, that was the first one 21 years ago. And there was the famous Ducks on Stage incident. Um, recall that one for the people who haven't heard your story.
It was the first time we played with a full orchestra, and it was outdoors, Kings Park, and it was a sparkling autumn day, March 2004. And of course, I was full of adrenaline and thrilled. And in a lovely ballad, I think it was Breathing You In, a family of ducks decided to fly down over the crowd and alight into the pond that was between us and the audience. And it was bucolic. It was one of those little moments of your live career that you never forget. Hmm.
Well, you've got the Queensland Symphony Orchestra show coming up, and you haven't done one with them since the Kevin '07 era.
I think we may have played with them once since 2007, Paul, but the most memorable was, as you're inferring, the election night in 2007. We were booked in Brisbane, and I was just starting on my gambling career, so I had some 3-to-1 bets placed for for four figures on certain electorates going up the east coast of Queensland. And I may or may not have been operating on the tips of some inside knowledge. Anyway, I was not only invested in that election ideologically, but also financially. And so I was very excited when the first results came in. And I took a television on stage, a plasma, and I didn't let it take over the evenings, but every half hour I'd turn it on for a minute just to see what was happening. And I do remember at one stage turning it on and finding out that Leichhardt had fallen to Labor and feeling more financially secure, and also turning it on just as Maxine McHugh claimed victory over John Howard in Bennelong. And the crowd, luckily, because it's a band called the Whitlams, seemed to be 85 to 90% Labor. And they cheered as much for that moment as they did for a song. And the conductor and I later on decided to go out and celebrate. And so we gate crashed the Labor Party celebration at Suncorp Stadium. And it was a memorable evening. I remember sitting in a pub with some of Kevin Rudd's staff at 4 a.m. and they started getting texts about how there was a meeting at 8 a.m. and they were a bit aghast that the boss had decided to get them out of bed at 7:30 on the night after this great election victory. And I suppose you could say at that moment one should have realised that Kevin probably didn't have the same antenna as everyone else.
One of the shows you'll be doing on this tour, Toowoomba. Um, have you ever got out to regional with the orchestras?
We've actually played with a Toowoomba Concert Orchestra before. They're a magnificent community organisation. There's 45, 50 of them, and they put on a few concerts a year. And this year is their 50th anniversary. And they asked us to play with them at the famous Toowoomba Flower Festival about 9 years ago. So when I put this tour together, I suddenly realised we should go to that beautiful Empire Theatre and play with them again. And so we're looking forward to rejoining forces with the Toowoomba Concert Orchestra. We're taking an orchestra to Newcastle for the first time. it's an orchestra of our own devising, which I've called the Sydney Philharmonic, and that is made up of about 15 string players from the Hunter and about 20 musicians that we're taking up the Pacific Highway on a bus and accommodating in Newcastle because we're doing 2 nights there now. So it's good to reward Newcastle for their very, very fundamental support of the Whitlams since the very early days.
That will be quite the magical mystery tour.
Yes, so they should be civilized, these orchestral types, more civilized than the characters you get in rock and roll.
Yes, without going into any names you might want to name there. We'll move on to the next question. At the Hamer Hall show, you revealed plans for a Torch the Moon 25th anniversary tour. How are those plans coming along?
Good, I've located all the masters. I'll be going into Studio 301 to cut the master for vinyl. It's the same MO as I've been through in the last 4 years, 25 years after an album. We put it on vinyl and then do the album in full. And we've already booked some venues for October 27. And that's something for us to look forward to the year after next. Torch the Moon was us searching for a different sound. It was a bit more angular, not quite as orchestral, but I'm fond of the album. I think it came in at #1 to the credit of Warner Music, who I was with at the time. So even though it's probably not our most famous album, we can at least say it's our only #1 album.
And it was the album, I guess, Jack Housden reached his songwriting stride, didn't he, with Gone Surfing on that one?
Yeah, it was a good co-write. It was a jam that we the boys just started playing in the studio and me I just thought it sounded like a modern surf tune, so I just sung about surfing on top and managed to barge my way into the royalties.
Well, based on what you've just told us over the last 20 minutes, pretty much 2026 and 2027 is locked in for you.
Yes, the only other thing I have to do is write 9 country songs and get the Black Stump Band out there on the hustings again because it's been too long.
Yes, that's a lot of fun.
It is. I enjoy the instruments of the American South, and I need to get cracking on that. A bit of solitude and reflection is required. But the orchestral tour is sort of, it's 13 gigs in 6 months. That's pretty low load from what I'm used to.
Yeah, that is true. You've been everywhere, man.
Yep, dapdo.
Good to see you, Tim.
Thank you, Paul.